The Indus Waters Treaty, often abbreviated as IWT, stands as a significant, albeit increasingly strained, agreement concerning transboundary water resources. It was meticulously brokered by the World Bank. The treaty was formally signed in September 1960 by India and Pakistan. Its primary objective was to establish a framework for the utilization of the waters of the Indus River system. This system comprises the Indus River itself and its 5 main tributaries. The IWT has historically been lauded as a remarkable example of conflict resolution. It has, against considerable odds, survived multiple wars and periods of intense diplomatic hostility between the 2 South Asian neighbors. The treaty effectively partitioned the rivers, granting control and unrestricted use of the 3 eastern rivers, the Beas, the Ravi, and the Sutlej, to India. Conversely, Pakistan was allocated control over the 3 western rivers, the Indus main stem, the Jhelum, and the Chenab. This division is not merely geographical, it has profound implications for water availability. The western rivers collectively carry approximately 80% of the total water volume within the Indus system. India is permitted certain limited uses on these western rivers, primarily for domestic, non-consumptive purposes and for run-of-the-river hydroelectric projects under specific criteria. The treaty also established the Permanent Indus Commission, with a commissioner from each country. This body is tasked with implementing the treaty, exchanging data, and resolving disputes that may arise from its interpretation or application. The enduring nature of the Indus Waters Treaty for over 6 decades is a testament to its robust design and the perceived mutual benefit it offered, despite the persistent political friction. It provided a predictable framework essential for long-term agricultural and infrastructure planning in both nations, particularly for Pakistan, which is heavily reliant on the Indus basin. The treaty also includes provisions for dispute resolution, which, while tested, have historically helped to de-escalate tensions over water sharing. However, the mechanisms are now facing unprecedented strain. The changing climate, increasing water demands due to population growth, and escalating political animosity are placing immense pressure on this foundational agreement, pushing it towards a potential breaking point. The fundamental premise of the IWT was to ensure water security and prevent water from becoming a direct casus belli. For many years, it largely succeeded in this aim, localizing water disputes and keeping them separate from the more volatile aspects of the India-Pakistan relationship, such as the Kashmir conflict. Yet the notion of water as a potential instrument of coercion has never entirely disappeared. The recent pronouncements and actions in early 2025 signal a dangerous shift. The strategic value of water, especially in an increasingly water-scarce region, means that any perceived or actual deviation from the treaty's terms can have far-reaching consequences, potentially unraveling decades of carefully managed, albeit tense, cooperation on shared water resources. The fragile peace surrounding the Indus Waters Treaty was dramatically shattered in late April 2025. A tragic event served as the immediate catalyst for a severe diplomatic crisis. On April 22, 2025, a brutal militant attack targeted tourists in Pahalgam, a region within Indian-administered Kashmir. This attack resulted in the deaths of 26 individuals and left dozens more wounded. The Indian government was swift and unequivocal in its response, publicly blaming Pakistan for orchestrating or supporting the militants responsible for the violence. This accusation immediately heightened the already simmering tensions between the 2 nuclear-armed neighbors, setting the stage for a significant policy shift from New Delhi. The day following the Pahalgam attack, on April 23, 2025, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a momentous announcement. He declared that India was suspending its participation in the 1960 Indus Waters Treaty. This was a radical departure from India's previous stance, even during periods of intense conflict. Prime Minister Modi further escalated the rhetoric by vowing to take measures to stop the flow of river water to Pakistan. His statement, "Water and blood cannot flow together," resonated widely, indicating a new, hardline approach. This pronouncement sent shockwaves across the region and the international community, signaling that water resources were now being explicitly linked to national security grievances. Pakistan, in response, vehemently denied any involvement in the Pahalgam attack. Islamabad issued stern warnings to New Delhi, stating that any attempt by India to interrupt the flow of water allocated to Pakistan under the ITUT would be considered an act of war. This counter-threat underscored the gravity of the situation, highlighting how quickly a dispute over water could escalate into a broader military confrontation. Pakistan's Finance Minister Mohammad Aurangzeb also weighed in, appealing for a de-escalation. He emphasized that water should not be weaponized and called for the reinstatement of the treaty, reflecting Pakistan's deep concerns over the potential ramifications of India's actions. The events of April 2025 thus marked a dangerous turning point. The Indus Waters Treaty, long seen as a resilient framework for cooperation, was suddenly at the heart of a major geopolitical standoff. India's decision to link the treaty's observance to alleged acts of terrorism by Pakistan introduced a new and volatile dimension to their relationship. This move effectively transformed the IWT from a tool of conflict resolution into a potential instrument of coercion. The international community watched with apprehension, recognizing that the unraveling of this decades-old accord could destabilize an already volatile region and set a dangerous precedent for other transboundary water disputes globally. Pakistan's reliance on the waters of the Indus River system is profound and multifaceted, touching nearly every aspect of its national life. An overwhelming majority, over 3/4 of Pakistan's total renewable water resources, originate from the Indus basin. This makes the country exceptionally vulnerable to any disruptions in the flow of these rivers, particularly the western rivers, the Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, which are allocated to Pakistan under the IWT. These rivers are not just water sources, they are the lifeblood of the nation's economy, its agricultural sector, and the daily sustenance of its large and growing population. The sheer scale of this dependence cannot be overstated. The agricultural sector in Pakistan is critically sustained by the Indus waters. Agriculture consumes an astonishing 94% of all water withdrawals in the country. This sector is a cornerstone of Pakistan's economy, contributing approximately 22.9% to its gross domestic product, GDP. Furthermore, it is the largest employer, providing livelihoods for about 37.4% of the nation's labor force. An estimated 80% of all Pakistani farms, ranging from small subsistence plots to large agricultural enterprises, are directly dependent on the irrigation systems fed by the Indus and its tributaries. Any significant reduction in water availability would therefore have catastrophic consequences for food production, rural incomes, and overall economic stability. Beyond agriculture, the Indus system is also crucial for providing drinking water to millions of Pakistanis, especially in urban centres. Major cities, including the sprawling metropolis of Karachi and the cultural heartland of Lahore, depend significantly on the Indus for their municipal water supplies. As urban populations continue to expand, the demand for potable water is ever increasing, placing further strain on this already stressed resource. A disruption in river flow would directly translate into severe drinking water shortages for a vast number of people, potentially leading to public health crises and social unrest in densely populated areas across the country. Furthermore, Pakistan's energy sector is heavily reliant on the Indus basin for hydropower generation. Approximately 1/5 of the nation's total electricity supply comes from hydroelectric power plants. Crucially, nearly all of these hydropower projects are located within the Indus River system and depend on the consistent flow of its waters. Pakistan also faces a significant challenge in terms of water storage capacity. The country's existing reservoirs can hold less than 10% of the Indus system's annual flows. This limited storage capacity means there is very little buffer to absorb shocks from reduced river flows, whether due to natural variability, climate change, or upstream diversions. The agricultural sector of Pakistan is inextricably linked to the waters of the Indus River system, forming the very spine of its food security and rural economy. The vast plains of Punjab and Sindh, often referred to as the country's breadbasket, are almost entirely dependent on the extensive network of canals that draw water from the Indus and its tributaries. This intricate irrigation system, one of the largest in the world, supports the cultivation of staple crops such as wheat, rice, cotton and sugarcane. These crops not only feed Pakistan's population of over 230 million people, but also contribute significantly to its export earnings, making agriculture a vital component of national stability. The timing and volume of water flow are critical for agricultural cycles in Pakistan. Any disruption, particularly during crucial planting or growing seasons, can have devastating effects. The low-flow season, typically from December to February, is an especially vulnerable period. Reduced water availability during these months can lead to delayed sowing, stunted crop growth, and significantly lower yields. Given that approximately 80% of Pakistani farms rely on this river system, the livelihoods of tens of millions of farmers and agricultural laborers are directly at stake. A severe water shortage could trigger widespread crop failure, leading to food insecurity, increased poverty, and potential mass migration from rural to urban areas. The economic ramifications of an agricultural collapse due to water scarcity would be immense. As agriculture contributes nearly a quarter of Pakistan's GDP and employs over a third of its workforce, a major shock to this sector would reverberate throughout the entire economy. Reduced agricultural output would lead to lower export revenues and an increased need for food imports, putting further pressure on Pakistan's foreign exchange reserves. Moreover, industries that rely on agricultural raw materials such as textiles, cotton and sugar processing would also suffer significant setbacks, leading to job losses and decreased industrial production across multiple connected sectors. Pakistan is already grappling with significant water stress due to a combination of factors, including climate change, rapid population growth, and historically inefficient water management practices. Rising temperatures are accelerating glacier melt in the Himalayas, the source of the Indus, leading to unpredictable flow patterns. Droughts are becoming more frequent and severe. The devastating floods of 2022, followed by an exceptionally dry winter in 2024 to 2025, with 67% less rainfall, have already highlighted the nation's extreme vulnerability. Any deliberate upstream reduction of water by India would therefore compound an existing crisis, pushing Pakistan's agricultural system and its dependent population towards an unprecedented catastrophe. Section 5. India's capacity and intent, the challenge of water weaponization. Despite the strong rhetoric and stated intentions from Indian leadership to restrict water flow to Pakistan, the practical ability to implement such a measure comprehensively and immediately is limited by existing infrastructure. India currently lacks the large-scale diversion or storage facilities on the western rivers, the Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, that would be necessary to completely halt or significantly reduce the water flowing downstream into Pakistan. Building new dams or canals capable of such large-scale water manipulation would be a monumental undertaking, requiring many years, if not decades, of planning and construction. The financial and environmental costs associated with developing such infrastructure would also be enormous. Massive dam projects and inter-basin transfer canals would not only strain India's own financial resources, but could also have significant environmental impacts within India, potentially affecting its own water resources and ecological balance. For instance, large reservoirs on the geologically active Himalayan terrain pose seismic risks and can submerge vast areas of land. Moreover, diverting water from the Indus system could impact water availability for Indian users downstream of any proposed diversion points, leading to domestic water conflicts within India itself, particularly in states like Punjab and Rajasthan. While a complete stoppage is currently unfeasible, India is exploring and undertaking projects that could allow for greater control and utilization of the waters of the western rivers within the IWT's permissible limits, or by pushing the boundaries of those limits. For example, there are plans to expand the Ranbir Canal on the Chenab River, which flows into Pakistan's Punjab province. This expansion could potentially double the canal's length to 120 kilometers, allowing India to divert an increased volume of water from the current 40 cubic meters per second up to 150 cubic meters per second. Such projects, while not stopping the entire flow, could alter its volume and timing significantly. India also aims to substantially expand its hydropower capacity in Jammu and Kashmir from the current 3,360 megawatts to an ambitious 12,000 megawatts. Many of these proposed hydropower projects, some of which include designs capable of storing considerable volumes of water, are on the western rivers. While existing and currently planned hydropower projects are projected to only marginally increase India's overall water storage capacity on these rivers in the short term, with completion timelines extending to 2032 or beyond, they represent a long-term strategy. These developments signal an intent to maximize water utilization, which Pakistan views with deep suspicion as efforts to gain greater leverage over downstream flows. Section 6. Dire consequences. Potential impacts of water disruption on Pakistan. The potential impacts on Pakistan, should India significantly disrupt the flow of the Indus waters, are multifaceted and overwhelmingly severe. The most immediate and visible consequence would be agricultural devastation. With 80% of its farms dependent on the Indus system, any substantial reduction in water, particularly during critical irrigation periods, would lead to widespread crop failures. This would not only jeopardize the livelihoods of millions of farmers, but also threaten the nation's food security, potentially leading to famine-like conditions in vulnerable regions. The ripple effects would include soaring food prices, increased rural poverty, and a desperate scramble for diminishing resources. Beyond agriculture, Pakistan's hydropower generation, which accounts for about 1/5 of its electricity, would be crippled. Nearly all of its hydropower projects are situated on the Indus and its tributaries. A significant decrease in water flow would directly translate into reduced electricity production, exacerbating Pakistan's existing energy crisis. This would mean more frequent and prolonged power outages, impacting industries, businesses, and the daily lives of citizens. The economic cost of such energy shortages would be substantial, further hindering development and potentially leading to job losses in manufacturing and other energy-dependent sectors. The lack of reliable power would also impact essential services like hospitals and water pumping stations. Drinking water supplies for major urban centres, including Karachi and Lahore, which rely heavily on the Indus, would face unprecedented challenges. Reduced river flows would mean less raw water available for treatment and distribution, leading to severe shortages for millions of city dwellers. This could trigger public health emergencies, as access to clean water is fundamental for sanitation and hygiene. The social fabric of these cities could come under immense strain, with the potential for unrest and conflict over scarce water resources. The competition for water between agricultural, industrial, and domestic users would intensify dramatically, creating complex social and political dilemmas for the government. These direct impacts would occur against the backdrop of an already severe water crisis in Pakistan. The country is frequently ranked among the most water-stressed nations globally, facing critical scarcity due to factors like climate change, rapid population growth, and inefficient water management infrastructure and practices. Post the 2022 floods, over 10 million Pakistanis were already lacking access to safe drinking water. An Indian-induced water shortage would therefore not just create a new problem, but would catastrophically exacerbate an existing existential threat, potentially leading to widespread economic destabilization and humanitarian disaster. Section 7. Beyond a full stop, India's strategies for water pressure. While a complete and immediate cessation of water flow to Pakistan from the western rivers is not currently feasible for India due to infrastructural limitations, New Delhi possesses several other mechanisms to exert significant water-related pressure. These actions fall short of a total blockage, but can still have considerable adverse effects on Pakistan's water management and agricultural planning. One such strategy involves temporary disruptions to water flows. For example, India could manage its existing dams on the western rivers, such as those for hydropower, in a way that alters the timing or volume of releases, perhaps by flushing sediments from reservoirs at strategically inconvenient times for downstream users in Pakistan. Such engineered disruptions, even if minor in overall volume, could critically affect the timing of water availability for Pakistan's agricultural sector. If water releases are delayed or concentrated outside crucial sowing or irrigation periods, it can lead to significant stress on crops and reduce yields. The psychological impact of such unpredictability can also be substantial, creating uncertainty for farmers and water managers in Pakistan. While these actions might also have some limited impact on Indian water users downstream of these dams within Indian territory, the primary strategic intent would be to apply pressure on Pakistan by demonstrating control over the water flow patterns. Another potent tool at India's disposal, should it choose to fully suspend its participation in the Indus Waters Treaty, is the cessation of data sharing. The IWT mandates regular exchange of hydrological data between the two countries concerning river flows, rainfall, and other relevant parameters. This information is critical for Pakistan, enabling it to manage its water resources effectively, plan irrigation schedules, and prepare for potential flood events. Halting this data flow would deprive Pakistani authorities of vital information, severely hampering their ability to forecast water availability and mitigate flood risks, thereby increasing their vulnerability to both droughts and floods. India's broader strategy might also involve accelerating the construction of run-of-the-river hydropower projects on the western rivers, designed to their maximum permissible limits under the IWT, or even subtly pushing those limits. While these projects are primarily for electricity generation and not large-scale diversion, their cumulative effect, especially if they incorporate pondage, can influence downstream flows. Pakistan has consistently raised objections to the designs of several Indian projects, fearing they could be used to manipulate water supplies. By pursuing these projects aggressively, India can maintain a persistent form of pressure, keeping Pakistan concerned about future water security and potentially forcing concessions on other disputed issues. Section 8. Geopolitical shockwaves, regional security at stake. India's decision to suspend its participation in the Indus Waters Treaty and the threat to alter water flows to Pakistan carries profound geopolitical ramifications that extend far beyond the bilateral relationship. Pakistan has unequivocally stated that it views any attempt by India to stop or significantly divert its allocated water as an act of war. This stark declaration highlights the immense risk of military escalation. If Pakistan perceives a serious threat to its water lifeline, it might feel compelled to respond forcefully, potentially targeting Indian water infrastructure or initiating broader hostilities. The conflict is deeply intertwined with issues of national security and territorial sovereignty, particularly concerning the disputed region of Jammu and Kashmir, through which these vital rivers flow. The suspension of the IWT could trigger a cascade of regional destabilization. A Pakistan facing severe water shortages, agricultural collapse, and economic turmoil would be an even more fragile state. This could have internal security consequences, potentially empowering extremist elements or leading to widespread social unrest. Such instability in a nuclear-armed nation would be a matter of grave concern for the entire international community. Furthermore, India's actions regarding the IWT could alarm its other neighbours, such as Bangladesh and Nepal, with whom it also shares significant river systems and has had, at times, fraught water relations. These countries might view India's stance as a worrying precedent for how it might approach other transboundary water agreements. A particularly significant geopolitical consideration is the precedent India's actions might set for China. India occupies an upstream position relative to Pakistan on the Indus. However, India is a downstream riparian for several major rivers originating in China, most notably the Brahmaputra. If India is seen to be weaponizing water against Pakistan, it could inadvertently provide justification or a blueprint for China to adopt similar strategies against India in the future. China's extensive dam building activities on the Tibetan Plateau are already a source of concern for New Delhi, and any move by India that normalizes the use of water as a coercive tool could weaken its own long-term strategic position vis-à-vis its larger northern neighbor. In response to India's suspension of the IWT, Pakistan has indicated it is preparing legal action in international forums. This could include approaching the World Bank, the original broker of the treaty, or even the International Court of Justice. While the outcomes of such legal challenges are uncertain and could be lengthy, they would further internationalize the dispute and potentially damage India's reputation as a responsible upholder of international agreements. The focus on the IWT is also seen by some analysts as an attempt by India to pressure Pakistan specifically over the Kashmir issue, potentially trying to narrow any future bilateral talks to specific concessions related to water or cross-border security concerns. Section 9. Historical Tensions and Future Uncertainties, Expert Perspectives. The current crisis over the Indus waters is not an isolated incident, but rather the latest chapter in a long history of water-related tensions in the subcontinent. The 1947 partition of British India, which created India and Pakistan, also arbitrarily divided the vast Indus River system. The headwaters of several key rivers remained in India, while the extensive irrigation infrastructure that depended on them predominantly fell within Pakistan. This geographical reality immediately sowed the seeds of dispute. In fact, disagreements over water allocation in the Indus Basin predate the founding of Pakistan, with significant contention arising between provinces in British India during the 1930s and 1940s over rights and shares. The Indus Waters Treaty of 1960 was a landmark achievement precisely because it sought to manage these inherent historical and geographical complexities. Experts like Daniel Haynes, who have studied the history of water in this region, stress that the treaty, while imperfect, provided a crucial framework that prevented water from becoming a constant source of open conflict for many decades. However, Haynes and others also underscore the severe consequences that any major disruption to Pakistan's water system would entail, given its almost total reliance on the Indus. The historical context reveals that while the IWTT provided stability, the underlying potential for water to become a flashpoint was never fully extinguished. Contemporary water security experts, such as myself and colleagues like Hassan Khan, acknowledge the immense technical challenges India would face in attempting to completely stop water flow to Pakistan. As Khan has noted, such a feat is practically impossible in the short to medium term given current infrastructure. However, he also highlights the potential for India to create small disturbances or engineered disruptions that could significantly impact Pakistan, especially its agricultural cycles. These smaller, more nuanced actions, while not a full-scale water war, can still serve as potent tools of political pressure and cause considerable economic and social distress downstream. Looking ahead, the long-term effects of India's current stance are a subject of grave concern. The infrastructure projects India is considering, such as expanding canals or building more hydropower facilities with storage capacities on the western rivers, are long-term endeavours. As I have previously highlighted, these projects, even if pursued within what India claims are IWT allowances, fundamentally alter the water landscape and heighten geopolitical risks. The suspension of the treaty itself, regardless of immediate physical water stoppage, erodes trust and dismantles a vital mechanism for cooperation. This sets a dangerous course, making the entire region more vulnerable to climate change impacts and increasing the likelihood that future water disputes could escalate into more serious confrontations. The path forward requires a return to dialogue and a recommitment to the principles of equitable water sharing.